It's just afternoon here, and I know it might not be there, but never mind. It's just my line. This is the 12th week of 2024. At knitting last night, Andy was making her hats. In fact, I'll tell you now, there was only me and Andy. Oh, and I'll tell you another thing. The cat's fine-ish. She's recovering. Last night at knitting, Andy was making her crochet hats. Now, I said sideways crochet because when you're ribbing in crochet, it's sideways, as you probably know. And you do your stitches through the back of the loop of the previous row, and it gives you a very firm, good, stretchy rib. So the whole hat is in rib. So I don't think I was clear about that last week. Anyway, she's made this pattern up, and she thinks that many other people will have done the same, but I don't think so. I think if you're quite inventive, you might just think that. So she's making them in different sizes, and all she has to do is cast on with a different amount of stitches for different sizes. So this week she was doing red ones with Women's Institute Aran, which is acrylic, but is very, or it might have had a little bit of wool in. Very scrumptious to feel. Very nice yarn. So she's still doing those, and I was doing my ugly cat shawl. I don't put it down. Well, I really want it. It would be great, but I don't know that it's going to happen. To get it done for the Mark Schulberg Challenge, which is the West Yorkshire, which is the politically incorrect knitters knit along at the moment, where you just finish a shawl during Lent, and it was to do with Mark Wahlberg blaring on about Lent like nobody else knew what it was about, with something on his head. I don't think he's a hologram, but he looked a bit like one. So here's my ugly cat shawl. Oh, there was another thing. There was only me and Andy there. Fee's now in France, and Helen was in Istanbul. I couldn't think of the name. So she did what you do when you go away and you get on Google and you Google wool shop, yarn shop. And she did find a craft shop. And I'll put some pictures on for you to see. It looked like a big shop, and they did have a lot of yarn, but it was mostly cottons or acrylic. But they had a good selection of needles and other things. So anyway, it's all in the pictures. I had a good zoom, and I had a good look at the pictures just to see what a wool shop would be like, or a yarn shop would be like in Istanbul. If you want to know that, there you go. Now for my ugly cat shawl. Coffee, black, because that's how I like it. So this was the beginning. Goes through and through. It's nice that the light goes through it, doesn't it, at this time of day? I was about here last week, I think. Well, starting this colour. So that's the centre. And I'm now on the, I now have like that much again to do. It's all backwards and forwards. And it doesn't take me too long, really. But I've just added this variegated yarn, and I was wondering how it would variegate. I was wondering if I'd have big splodges or stripes. But as I go on, the rows will get longer, and I don't know if the effect will change, but at the moment I think that's all right. So it's not symmetrical, and my colours are just flowing from one thing to another, and it'll just be what it is. I think that it was really good to use bits of mohair on it, because some of my balls I only had part balls of a certain colour, and doing a wedge or a little bit more than a wedge has used up more or less all that colour. So it's a really good way of using your mohair up, because mohair goes quite a long way, doesn't it? What I am wearing is Hermione by Emma Wright, and it's made with West Yorkshire Spinners Illustrious double knit. Actually, my husband secretly bought this yarn for me because I'd showed him the pattern in the book that I wanted to knit, and he knew where to go because I must have talked about it. So he went and bought all the colours for me to make it. There is a little mistake, but if somebody tried to swap, I would know. I would know which one was mine. I can't even find it. I can't see it now. This stripe here is green and purple, and this stripe here is green and this reddy colour. It's not very obvious, is it? It's right on the front. It's not. Nobody ever notices. So the sleeves and the back are, it might be a colourway called lichen, but I'm not entirely positive about that. But I also liked knitting with that because it was nice how the colours changed as you were making it. And with it being double knit, it's very warm. It's also a good fit. But obviously with your fair owl being double on every row, that makes it warmer. But not uncomfortably warm. Also, Helen, obviously flying to Istanbul, did run a check with the airway that she was going with, whether she could take a crochet hook, and attached a photograph of said hook and was given permission. So she's been making little crochet hearts. I'm not quite sure what they're for, but I'm sure we'll find out. Maybe a blanket or a cushion, or so I think they're for embellishing something. We'll see. Right, as for Millie, I did tell you last week that she was very ill, and by the Friday she was probably at rock bottom, to be honest. I think on the Friday when I'd done my filming, she had just started to move her head in the other direction rather than to the left all the time. So if you haven't watched before, Millie is an 18-year-old cat that we have rehomed, and we've only had for just over 2 months. She's had vestibular disease, which is something to do with the inner ear and balance, and everything was going to the left. She was twisted to the left, whatever we did with her. So she went to the vets and she got antibiotic ear drops, because I do think that what caused it was when we rehomed her, she had ear mites, especially in that ear, I think. So I got drops for that, just bought some over the counter and used them, and she seemed to itch less. But I think she must have had them for a long time, and it's obviously caused her a problem. By the Friday, she hadn't really picked up that much. So I got back onto the vets and we got her some steroids. So then she started with those, And she had those for 6 days and then 2 alternate days. So she's still on them. Now, while she was really ill, she was just lying in a bed with an infection as well as having this balance thing. She had this infection, and the vets wouldn't... They would have done a CT scan had it been a different cat that wasn't 18 years old, because their surgeon wasn't prepared to do an operation on her. So she got the steroids, and I think they've helped, but she wouldn't eat anything except for Greek yogurt, which I think I mentioned last week. So Polly Princess is eating Greek yogurt off my best china. And I don't even think it's the best thing for her, but she will not eat anything else. That's it for now. And that was just the tiniest amount. It wasn't really enough. She had some with food and then she didn't do it again. So I had a syringe off the vet that was sort of a reasonable size. So I was making sure for days that she had enough water. Well, I don't even know if she did have enough water. And they are supposed to eat, cats. Cats aren't supposed to go more than about 3 days without eating, because it can cause them problems with their kidneys, livers or whatever. So I got in touch with the lady. Now she came from a local cat rescue place, not a national one, just a local one set up by individuals, cat lovers. They work very hard to look after cats and rehome them, and they did empty a hoarder's house. He had a lot of cats. None of them had their operations, so they did empty his house. He allowed them to do that eventually. We have some feral we have feral cats. We have some around the old docks, and we have them around the industrial estates. There are some feral cats, and they trap them and try and get them seen to also, or I think there would be kind of a big problem. So that's what they do. So I messaged the lady, Julie. She'd never heard of vestibular disease. Now, cats and dogs can both get it, and it can be caused by a variety of issues that they can have. But I said, I'm not having trouble trying to get any food into her. So she said, oh, I've got some sachets of, it's like rehydrating gravy, and they love it. I'll drop you some off. So she dropped me some off on the Sunday. And I started putting those in the syringe, which was, I think she really picked up from there. And then after that, we had some chicken. She ate tiny bits, but nowhere near enough. So I tried to blend it, but then it was too thick to go through the nozzle. So I thought, well, I will try some cat food with the gravy on and like mush it up to make it very wet. And she started to eat. She's been sort of, what was it, Saturday was sunny, so we took her out and put her on the lawn, and she laid there and did a poo. And then in all the time that she's been poorly, she's not made any mess anywhere. And I had strategically placed puppy pads and cat litter boxes and things so that she wouldn't have to go far if she could move. Now, she couldn't really move at all. She was really seriously ill for about 3 days and didn't really move at all. Just laid there, and we kept her warm, and my husband made hot water bottles up and we put them underneath the bed so they wouldn't be too hot for her, but the heat would rise. And I had a little piece of, what do you call it? what do you call fleece? So she's got a fleecy blanket now, and she was like a little doll. She just would lie there and like to be looked after and mollycoddled. So she did start to eat, and she tried to move, and she was kind of dragging herself along a bit, but she loves the garden, so we'd take her out there and try and get her to walk about out there. So she'd sort of drag herself off and do a toilet in the bushes in the edge, and then now this disease takes 2 to 3 weeks in total to recover from, and then there's also the underlying cause that needs to be treated, and the CT scan would have been for polyps that would have been operated on had they been prepared to do so. Though I don't know if I look around and if she has got a polyp, which I'm not sure, I'm not certain whether she has or not. They're quite rare, so chances are, fingers crossed, that she hasn't. But I don't know if another vet would be prepared to do it or not. Anyway, she's only tiny and she's lost weight. But now she's really troughing. So she has breakfast, lunch and dinner, or breakfast, dinner and tea, whichever way you would like to say it. And then for supper she has Greek yoghurt. And then she goes to bed. And she gets tucked up with a little fleecy blanket. And she's still there in the morning, waiting to be up. She was sitting up this morning looking around, and I wasn't late or anything like that. And now she can jump on the sofa. But I'm not sure about her getting off. Every time she's got off, someone's lifted her off, because, you know, they've lifted her off, and then I encourage her to walk a little bit for food. And she's got to learn how to balance. So carrying her everywhere is no good. And her balance will be relearned, apparently. So she is doing better, but the walking is taking longer than the perking up. The perking up took. That's a physiotherapy, is walking in the garden. She's been in the greenhouse, and she sits and looks all over the place. And her eyes were gungy as well, so I don't know if her eyes have been affected or her eyesight, because her eyes didn't look very clear for a while. So I put some little bits of footage of the cat now that she is in recovery, because nobody wants to see a dying cat, basically. And I think I've got enough little bits of video and clips to show you her improvement. But I probably didn't film her when she was really ill. So there won't be much of anything to do with her being really ill in a bed. So I can keep you updated on how long it takes for her to get fully mobile. I managed to get the water through the syringe and fathomed out that the side of her mouth was the best place, and then I read it online afterwards, but I'd already fathomed that out. So Molly Mandy is in recovery, and fingers crossed she gets a little bit more mobile. But a purr came back about 3 days ago, 3 or 4 days ago. She started purring again, because she wasn't purring either. I think she was really seriously ill. Anyhow, I think that's everything I need to talk to you about this week. So, more news, maybe next week. That's quite good.